Hi, this is Caitlin in April, filming an intro to this video because apparently I never did. This is a vlog of my thoughts while I was reading for the Booktube Nonfiction Prize, OktaFinals. I was Group A. Oh, and also down below I have links to jump to different books and to jump to my thoughts at the end because this is very long. I'm sorry.
I don't know if I'm going to use any clips of me not reading the books or talking about reading the books, but if I do, hi, it is Tuesday, February 2nd. I have not started any of my nonfiction book prize books, but tonight I hung out with my siblings. They watched a show I am super not interested in watching because I don't think it's good, but instead I sat on the couch and I edited a video, and so hopefully I will have a video out this week. I'm really excited about it, and I am going to try to start the Lawrence Wright book because I have that on ebook.
It's lunchtime, but I don't have time to make a full lunch because I am playing an RPG at lunch, which is what I do on Thursdays. But I did want to mention, I did start The Plague Year by Lawrence Wright this morning. I'm only like 10 pages in, but I'm already really hesitant. One, we are still in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, or hopefully past the hump, but it's still happening. So any book about it necessarily leaves things out, which is fine if the focus of the book is on something that's completely already done. So, for example, Michael Lewis's book, The Premonition, actually really worked, in part because the focus was on the early response and how we botched it. So the early response and the botching of it was done in 2020. So that book still feels complete, even though the pandemic is not complete. I'm unclear if this one is going to be like that or if it's going to try to be more expansive, but then it was really only about the first year. It's called The Plague Year, so it's really about 2020, but I don't know what that really means. Secondly, I both know not enough and too much about COVID-19. I've spent more than a year now listening to 8+ hours a week of virologists talking about COVID-19 and other related things, but I don't read a lot outside of that, and I don't get a lot outside of that because it stresses me out too much. So I pick very specific sources that I trust, and I ignore everything else. Also, having lived through it, my own memory and what I remember doesn't always match what Wright is talking about, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my memory is correct. It just causes a cognitive dissonance that's kind of hard. Anyway, I'm going to take my tea and my granola bar and go play some Star Trek RPGs. All right, Nana, what are we doing?
We're going to pick up our glow sticks for our entry to Luminary Loppet.
Yeah, what's Loppet?
I don't know, a thing where you walk or ski or something.
It is a fundraiser for the Loppet Foundation. They are lighting a trail on the lake that's by us, and so we got tickets when it was still not frozen. But honestly, it's the warmest it's been all week, so...
Yeah, it's like 20 degrees out right now.
No complaints.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
It's been in the single digits most of the week.
Exactly.
Or colder.
So that's what we're doing. It will be dark by the time it starts. We're just picking our glow sticks up early. So this on the left, you can see a couple of people skiing, is where the luminary is later. And there was also like a structure back there that was being lit. So we're waiting till it's dark, but that's where we're going to be. Inside the ice. Okay, that's cool. The candles.
Have you been to this before?
No, this is our first year.
Quick update. I have not read any more than the last time updated, but I did go to the library twice. So on Friday, I got a bunch of things from the library, but the relevant thing to this vlog is this chonker.
I did not vote for this. So we will see if it ends up surprising me, wowing me. But one of my goals is to finish at least half of this in February, because otherwise we are in for bad news, my friends. Bad news. At least like 100 pages of it is bibliography and notes. Hold on, let's see. Actual text that I have to read is less than 800 pages. So, these 200 pages I don't have to. But yeah, and then shout out to the other library that I have a card to, coming through for me and giving me a copy of Diary of a Young Naturalist and Fuzz by Mary Roach. I also have on ebook right now The Plague Year by Lawrence Wright, and there's a copy waiting for me at the library if I actually go to work tomorrow in person, more likely Tuesday. It's Sunday. What did I do today? Look at a house with my sister, church stuff, socialize with my family, and watch the Olympics. No reading. But my goal for February is to read Fuzz, to read The Plague Year by Lawrence Wright, to read at least half of the Enlightenment, and to read either Diary of a Young Naturalist or On Animals. I think then I will be in good shape for this. So that's the plan for now. We'll see. It is Tuesday, February 8th, and it is so warm today. I don't even have my jacket zipped. I don't have gloves on. I don't have a hat on. I don't have my mask on. I'm walking to the library, got my backpack, and I mostly wanted to get out of the house while it was nice out, because it's easy when you work from home to just not ever leave your apartment, and we gotta cherish the warm days. So that's the plan. I got my books, and I have shed my coat because it is that warm. So I'm just walking back home, and I have probably 2 hours of work left. I have become the t-shirt wearer. It's like 30, 40 degrees now. It's so warm. 40. I think it's 40. All right. I am about to make dinner, which I usually listen to podcasts or audiobooks while I'm doing. And right as I was going to buy my ingredients for dinner, I finished listening to Culture Warlords, which is for Nonfiction Book Club. So now I can move on, and I did get the Enlightenment audiobook a couple days ago on audio, and it's 40 hours long. So I'm not going to finish this book on audio, but I'm going to start it on audio, and I'm going to start it today. So that's the plan, and that one is the most scary, intimidating book of them all. So I'm going to start that, and then I'm really going to dig in and read more of the books I need to for my Booktube Nonfiction Prize judging, because I have barely started one of them. It's 3 o'clock on Saturday. I'm downtown going to my P.O. box. Things you have not seen me do today: have a slow start to the morning, talk to my sister, and go to visit 2 open houses for her. This is my post office. I like to go to the fanciest one around, you know? There we go. But I'm not expecting anything else. This is a book that I need for Bible study. And then, number 4 is missing. Interesting. We got some Bebezito, and we're watching the Olympics. This is why we go to Bebezito, because they have really good ice cream. How is it, Nano?
Very good. Do I have chocolate on my mouth?
No, well, maybe. My reading has slowed immensely, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, I'm filming this extremely ambitious video series where I'm cooking all of my meals out of the same cookbook for a week. Choices have been made. 2, I have been watching the Olympics, but those ended today. So 3, the final thing, apart from editing, which is like this much, is that I haven't been reading at all lately, because I've been telling myself I have to read this, because I do have to read it. And I have just so little desire to read it. So today is Sunday. I'm super busy today, but tomorrow is a holiday. It's President's Day. I have off. So I'm going to force myself to read as much of this as possible tomorrow. I am capable of forcing myself to read things. And so that is on the docket. It's not that long. I can do this. I have to get through this so I can read the other books that I think I will like more, and then I can force myself to read the book on enlightenment, which might actually be better than this one. So that's the plan. That's what I'm doing today. Not really today. I'm doing chaos today, but tomorrow. So I will let you know tomorrow if I have succeeded. Wish me luck. All right, I just picked up On Animals from my suburban library I have access to, and it's not that long, so it's really just that Enlightenment book that's long, so I just need to read everything except the Enlightenment book in the next week, and then I will feel like I'm in good shape for March. So just 4 books in 1 week. It'll be fine. It's fine. It'll be fine. I am going to eat at Culver's because, like, during Lent and I guess a little bit before it, they have walleye, and they got it early this year, and we called and checked, so we're gonna go get walleye at Culver's. It's Wednesday, and I have forced myself to get to 148 in this book, which is a little more than halfway, but it is still like pulling teeth. So I think I'm going to simultaneously start Diary of a Young Naturalist, which I'm much more interested in. I think I'll like a lot more, and hopefully I do. And then I can feel like I succeeded in reading at least 2 books in February. All right, I've read 19 pages of this, and I am cautiously optimistic. It certainly reads faster than Plague Year. I'm certainly less annoyed by it than Plague Year. I don't know how I'm going to feel about the actual literal diary aspect of it, but we shall see. But it is almost Thursday, so I'm going to go to bed now because I'm very tired. I have about 100 pages left of The Plague Year by Lawrence Wright, so I am making progress. I actually had a couple things that were new in this chapter. The author talks about a book that came out, that he published, that came out in April of 2020, that was a novel that involved a pandemic and how it differed or did not differ from how we actually reacted. And also, the author talks a little bit about how COVID-19 got to San Quentin State Prison in California. So that was new. I don't think Michael Lewis did a good job of covering kind of how COVID has affected prisons in The Premonition. I have about 100 pages left of this. Ugh. The world is a mess. It's the end of February. Russia invaded Ukraine. But I also am going to be reading some more of Diary of a Young Naturalist tonight. So I am about 20 pages into this, and I'm going to try to get another 20 pages in today. All right, I'm now 40 pages into this, and if I read another 20 pages tomorrow, I will get to the end of spring. This book is going to be such an interesting one to rate, because I feel like it could rate anywhere from, like, 2nd to 4th. I have kind of an idea in my head of where I think things will end up, but this one, I just don't know. It's written, like, to us as a reader, and the author talks about their autism and nature and how nature centers them. It's also diary. I don't know. It's very, I don't know. All right. It is Saturday, something of February, I think the 26th. And I have finally made it to page 200 in The Plague Year. And I'm going to try to read some more tonight, but I wanted to complain about it to you before I do that. Because I think I've maybe identified what I dislike about this book so much. 2 major things. 1, the author, Lawrence Wright, is much too trusting of existing power systems and authority in this book. He's certainly skeptical of Trump and the Trump administration, but he is not nearly skeptical enough of other kind of institutions. And having just lived through this and continuing to live through it, I think that's a mistake. It's hard to know how I would have felt about that aspect of this book if I hadn't already read The Premonition by Michael Lewis, which again is much better than this book, much more compelling and interesting, and I think shorter. I think I still would have felt that something was a little bit off about it, because certainly one of the things that's happened over the last few years is a general distrust of institutions, specifically the CDC, has lost a lot of face. And the other thing that frustrates me is it's like ostensibly about COVID, but also it's about all of 2020 because it's about the plague year. And so it's trying to condense so much what happened into this book. So I've now gotten through a single chapter that was about the death of George Floyd and just briefly kind of touching on the protests that happened nationwide, and A, having both lived through those, and B, literally living in Minneapolis, where we're still dealing with this, where we still have the Minneapolis Police Department that thinks they are above the law and can do whatever they want. And it's just really bad here. It's not really bad for me specifically, but watching the ways that the power structures in the city continue to uphold these broken systems is very frustrating. And so for there to be a single chapter on it that just sort of glossed over things was honestly kind of frustrating and insulting. Would it have been worse if he hadn't talked about it at all? I don't know. You kind of have to talk about the protests in the context of what happened with COVID and the way that they didn't end up perpetuating or spreading more of COVID. But also it was just very frustrating. I mean, literally like 3 days ago, the other 3 officers that were with Chauvin were all convicted in their federal case of violating George Floyd's civil rights. So Tutau and Thomas Lane and the third whose name I'm forgetting right now. Anyway, like that just happened like 3 days ago. And so it's so frustrating to read this. The point being, it tries to condense too much. It's too soon. I'm still living through this. It's frustrating to read. And he trusts authority too much. So I said 2 things, and trust me, that's basically 2 things. It's just all the things that feed into those 2 things. Anyway, so far, this is the only thing I have been reading. This is definitely number 6 on my list. Something will have to be truly terrible to go below this because I hate it so much. I forced myself to read another 28 pages of The Plague Year, so now I have 60 pages left? 50 pages left? I don't know. I am determined to finish this in February, so I can at least finish 1 book in February. Well, it's 40 minutes after midnight, so that means it's technically March, but I did finally finish The Plague Year, and yeah, I hated it. I just think that it is some of the worst writing I have personally read about the pandemic so far. I would not recommend this book. It's definitely currently sitting at number 6, even though it's the only one I've finished. And now I'm going to go to bed because I'm tired, but I have defeated this beast. It's March 2nd. It's the morning. Reading last night didn't really work for me, and I'm behind. So I'm this far into my second book. I haven't read any of it in March yet, and maybe I can finish it tomorrow if I read really hard today and tomorrow. That's the plan, okay? Let's do that. Let's say that. So, but right now, I'm making myself some tea, pouring myself some cereal, and I'm going to try to read 20 pages before I start work. It is the wee hours of the morning on Monday, March 7th. I've spent a good chunk of today shoving my stuff into boxes and finding places to shove the boxes and consolidating smaller boxes into larger boxes because our landlord is coming to take pictures tomorrow of our apartment. Point of all of that is to say that I have the audiobook for On Animals and I've been listening to it. I'm about 75% in. I didn't realize right away that this is just a collection of Susan Orlean essays about animals from various periods in time. I'll check the copyright page, but I know one of them mentioned cassette tapes. So they're definitely from several previous years. These pieces originally appeared in slightly modified form in the New Yorker, Smithsonian, The Atlantic, and as an Amazon original. For more details, see a later page. So, my first impression was that I was not really going to like this because the introduction felt very self-indulgent, and I had to 1.25x the audio because I didn't like the pace Susan Orlean was reading at. But I think getting into it more, the actual essays are interesting. Just thought the introduction was not good. I think this will probably end up just being like a solid 3-star book for me. I think this will probably end up at, I don't know, maybe 4th in my lineup. We'll see. We'll see how I feel about everything else as I finish it. But yeah, I should finish this tomorrow because I have to wake up early and do more cleaning. But I can't do that right now because I'm just exhausted. It is Thursday, March 10th, and we have made some progress. So today I finished the audiobook of On Animals by Susan Orlean. I think I would describe this book as perfectly adequate for fans of Susan Orlean, but it didn't feel particularly special. It was largely a collection of older essays. I looked up the dates on them, and the oldest one was from the mid-90s, and the most recent was actually from 2020, or 2021 actually, but there was only one that was from the last decade, and then there were updates from the last decade to a different one. But otherwise, they were mostly from the aughts and then like from 2010 or earlier. I know the idea of a collection like this is like, oh, stories about animals are timeless, and Susan Orlean's work is like great in essay form, so let's collect a bunch of her essays on animals. But I don't know, it just didn't feel like something special in this time. I don't know if it will end up making it into the top 3 or not, because I am have very mixed feelings so far about everything in my group, but I don't think it's going to make it very far, even if it does make it out of this group, because based on my previous year's experience, the books that make it to the semifinals and finals are better than this. But I will say, it was definitely still better than the Plague Year, which again, I hated. The other thing I'm excited about, I thought I was going to finish this today, but I didn't. But I am within 20 pages, which is like spitting distance at the end of Diary of a Young Naturalist. And this one is not really what I expected. I think I just had in my mind completely unrealistic, I don't even know, feelings around it. But this is one of only 2 books in this group that I actually like voted for when I was voting for who would make it to the judging rounds. And I just thought it sounded like an interesting concept. And I still think it's at moments very interesting. And I think it has greater potential overall than On Animals. So I think in the end, it's going to get a little higher than that. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this yet. It's nature writing, which is not always my forte. 2, it's this diary format, and I think it's adapted from a diary that the author wrote when they were like 14, which is a little bit odd, but it's interesting because it's not just this like nature diary. It's also about like moving in a new school and being a young teen today and having all these fears about the future and like being autistic and how you relate to the world with autism. And so this is really interesting in a lot of ways. I don't know if it's exactly what I expected, and so I'm trying to get over my expectations and to just accept it for what it is. But I think how these are kind of going to play out is I think that these 2 are going to be clustered kind of together. I don't know if they're going to be 2nd and 3rd or 3rd and 4th or 4th and 5th, but I think these are going to end up being kind of middling. I'm pretty sure the Plague Year is going to stay right at the bottom for me because I really disliked it. So we'll see how I feel once I get to the rest of those. But I have 20 days left to read the 3 longest books on my list. So that's going to be fun. Bye. It is March 11th, Friday, March 11th. It's the morning, and I just finished Diary of a Young Naturalist, so I wanted to do a quick update. I think this one and On Animals are just really tight. I think it would be totally reasonable if any other reader for this group would flip them. But I think for me, this one is going to end up just edging out On Animals because I think it has more potential. Like, the author is so young here, and I feel like their next work will be so good. It's hard for me to be in this group because it's so much nature-ish writing. And I'm not usually a nature writing person, like especially the style of this is for people who like find so much energy and solace in nature. And like, I think nature is pretty and all, but it's not my jam. I'm like a city kid. I think that people are more interesting than nature. I'm sorry. And so a lot of this was lost on me, but I think that the writer also had a lot of interesting personal elements in it, brought an interesting element to the book, and it kind of bound it all together in one semi-narrative, as opposed to On Animals, which is an essay collection, which we know, well, you don't know because I've never actually posted these before, but I know from filming many of these videos and then never actually putting them into a functional video form that essay collections are a real struggle for me. And I think that one in general I did better with because Susan Orlean has, a very established New Yorker style of essay. With Susan Orlean and On Animals, it's a collection of essays she's written over the last 25 years, roughly. And most of those essays were written at least 10 years ago. And it really is like, she is an established writer. She has an established style. Whereas this is like a first book. It's adapted from a diary, presumably. And the diary is from the author's 14th and 15th years, like spanning both of them. And so I think that the potential here is higher. And so that's kind of edging it out for me. But I'm going to go start Fuzz so that I can get a head start on that and then hopefully finish it shortly. And then I'll only have the 2 left. So that's the plan. Whew. Wish me luck. I knew I had to be out of the apartment today when there was the showing, and I also had a list of things to do for my sister. So I packed myself this bag because I was like, I'm going to go to the cute little cafe in between the things I do for my sister and the showing, and then I'll come when it's all done. And then I did not. do any of the stuff in my bag. I went to 3 open houses for my sister, and my mom was with me, and we hung out a little bit afterward. We had lunch together at a local grocery store, hot bar thing, and then I came back, and now I actually have to tackle the things in this bag because I do need to do them. Namely, I need to maybe finish the whole Mary Roach book today. And if I do that, that'll be the only thing I do. But I also have some letters to write. I have a birthday card that is 2 weeks late to write. All of that is like the fun stuff I have to do. The other stuff I have to do is like clean all of my stuff, get rid of things, all of that. But I'm not emotionally ready for that yet. So reading it is. It is Sunday, March 13th. Daylight saving time started today. We lost an hour. Yay. And I am about 200 pages into Fuzz by Mary Roach. So I have about 100 pages left. And I think I can get that done. I don't know if I can get it done tomorrow, but maybe by Tuesday. Anyway, I was thinking about trying to read a chapter of The Enlightenment before bed, but it's 11 p.m. right now, so I think I'm just going to go to bed. But I will say, so far, Fuzz reads like a pretty typical Mary Roach book. Each chapter focuses on basically one thing, but she kind of spirals out and touches on like little tidbits of other things with each of that. I am enjoying it so far, and I think it will definitely be in my top 3, but I am a little bit disappointed. I was telling my brother about this earlier, that I haven't liked some of the other books even more in this group, because I think ultimately, like, I didn't vote for this book, because even though I like Mary Roach's books, I often recommend them to people. I don't know if I feel like they really rise to the level of like Booktube Nonfiction Award finalist, and I really wanted books that had finalist potential to get in, so I am going to pass this one through to the next round, but I don't think it will make it much past that. It is technically very early in the morning on Wednesday, the 16th of March, and I stayed up so I could finish Fuzz. I was halfway through the last chapter of my bus ride home, and then I got home and I hung out with my sister, had dinner, we watched some Ted Lasso, I read a different book, and then I was like, oh, I should finish this before bed. So now the only thing I have left to read that I currently have in my possession is the 800-page book about the Enlightenment. Yay. That's going to be fun to carry around. But anyway, this one is my favorite of what I've read so far. In typical Mary Roach fashion, each chapter is interesting, compelling about a different thing, but she does a little bit at the end of each chapter to sort of collect them all together, lead to the next thing. We will see how I feel about the Enlightenment, and when I get my hands on it, crying in H-Mart. I'm in the parking garage of the library because I just picked up Crying in H-Mart. So, funny enough, about 10 or so days ago, I messaged the friend who is going to buddy-ish read this book with me to say, okay, I don't have it yet from the library, but I have to read it by the 30th, so I'm just going to say, regardless of whether or not I get it from the library on time, I am going to start it on March 20th. And guess what day it is? March 20th. The point being, I have 10 days left to read this entire book, which I think I'm going to love. And also to read, 38 hours of the Enlightenment book. So, the Enlightenment book, how is that going so far? It's hard to read. It's hard to focus on. I'm not interested in it, which is not helping. I don't think it's necessarily written poorly by any means. It's just that I don't care about the topic, and it's the type of book that you have to care about the topic. It's not going to catch you in if you're not. So what I've been doing today is listening to the audiobook as I drive around a little bit, but I'm going to be home soon and I'll be home the rest of the day. So I'll probably go sit out on my deck actually, because it's a super gorgeous day today. So I'll either sit out on my deck and read it up there and read the physical copy to see if I read any faster than the audiobook, or I'll put in my headphones and I'll walk around the lake because it's a beautiful day and I'll just listen to the audiobook some more. So that's the current plan. We'll see how it goes, but right now I'm stuck in a parking garage, so yeah. 10 days. Instead of reading the Enlightenment book, I took a nap and then started Crying in H-Mart. And it is so good so far. I'm 4 chapters in. It's very emotional. I already cried once. All of the feelings about family and food and everything. Anyway, so far, best of the books I've read, but I'm only 4 chapters in, so we will see how it goes. But I think I'm gonna go, I don't know, I'm so tired. It's like too early to sleep, but maybe it's not too early to sleep, I don't know. But maybe I'll go force myself to read The Enlightenment. It's about 11 p.m. on March 22nd. I was sick yesterday, so I basically didn't get any reading done. I slept all day and felt queasy. I did listen to a little bit more of the Enlightenment book. I think my struggle with the Enlightenment book is that I wasn't really interested in the topic. And so, although I'm sure it's a perfectly suitable book about the topic of the Enlightenment, what I need is a book that is going to grab or engage a person who doesn't really care. And so far, it's not doing that. Maybe if I cared more about the topic, I'd be really engaged and really interested, and I'd be like, yeah, this is such a great book about the Enlightenment. But I just don't care. I don't care at all. In better reading news, I am 70% into crying in H-Mart. I cried. It's so good. It's such a realistic, thoughtful, raw, and honest portrayal of grief and mother-daughter relationships. And yeah, definitely going to be my top book. I am going to listen to more of the Enlightenment book as I fall asleep, but I don't really feel like it's going to change. I don't know. We're not supposed to read other people's reviews, but I really feel like I want to read other people's reviews and see what they like about this because it's so blah. I keep waiting for the author to talk about the way other people have talked about the Enlightenment, or some of the criticisms of the Enlightenment, or just anything that's not just a glowing recitation of what he considers to be part of the Enlightenment. And it's not there. So I don't know. I really hope that somebody else who's in this group makes a vlog with their thoughts or makes a video with their thoughts, because I just want to know what everyone else thinks of this book. I want to know if you voted for this book. Why did you vote for this book? Please tell me down below. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye. It's Wednesday, March 23rd. I'm still sick, but I did just finish crying in H-Mart, and it was fabulous. I'm actually really disappointed that I've been sick basically the whole time I've been reading this book, because this is a real foodie book. And while I've been reading it, I've been on a very bland diet. Crying in H-Mart. Absolutely spectacular. This book is about food. It's about relationships. It's about mother-daughter relationships. It's about the death of a parent. All of these things. It's really, really good. I would highly recommend it. But maybe don't be sick when you read it, and do have access to good Korean food. I really liked this book, and I can see why everyone raves about it, and I definitely want it to make its many rounds in this. Honestly, of the ones I've finished, I think this is the only one that I would be sad if it doesn't make it, past the next round as well. Hello, it's 10:30 p.m. on Friday, March 25th, so I have less than 5 days left to read in my judging period, and I am barely 100-ish pages into this chonker. I hit 10% yesterday. I have not been reading a lot out of this. I've been listening to the audiobook before I go to bed, and when I have time to really focus on it. So tomorrow, Saturday, I'm going to try to get in a couple good hours of reading, see how fast my pace is when I'm reading. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to finish this one, because it's so hard to know if my opinion will change if I finish it. Do I think it's bad or poorly written if you care about the Enlightenment? No. Do I care enough about the Enlightenment to read this book? No. So we'll see. Right now this is sitting at 5th, but I'm going to try to read at least 200 pages before I make a decision. So that's the plan. Bye. It has come to this. I just timed myself reading one section of the book on enlightenment that was 7 pages long. And then I compared it to how long the audiobook took, and I am, in fact, faster at reading it myself. Am I processing it? I don't know, but we're going to see how much I can read today. All right. It is Wednesday, March 30th. Ballots are due today. I turned my ballot in yesterday, so I'm ready to talk to all y'all about how I rated these 6 books. I was Group A. Here's a reminder of the books we're going to talk about. A little note. So this is the 3rd year I've participated in the Booktube Nonfiction Prize. Some thoughts that I've just gathered around that. Hi, editing Caitlin here to just summarize what I was going to say in the next too many minutes into something shorter. So relevant to know, every year before we actually get the rounds and our assignments in January, Robert sends the judges a list of many titles that are in consideration for the prize that year, and he lets us vote on them. You have this huge list of like 60 plus books, and you have to get it down to 20 that you vote for, and I had to cut a bunch of stuff that I wanted to make it but couldn't vote for because I had to compress my votes down to 20. And then there are books that I intentionally was like, absolutely not. I am not voting for that. This group is 2 books that I voted for and 4 books that I decidedly did not vote for. And also there was a book I really wanted to make it that didn't, and I'm still salty about it. Take all of this with that context. Thank you. And I feel like my experience was kind of reflected in that. I'll also say that the other year, so 2 years ago, that I read the first round picks, I found that experience to be a lot more uneven than last year when I read for rounds 2 and rounds 3. I think generally round 2 and 3 like had a very high level of writing, but were not always to my specific taste. Whereas the first year it was more uneven. I think this is maybe a little bit of a split the difference. I think everything was competently written, but not everything was to my taste, and not everything I felt was good nonfiction. So all that to say, I'll let you know while I go, but surprise, surprise, the books that I didn't think I would like did end up in the bottom, which is a little bummer to me because I always like to be surprised. Not a surprise at all to any of you who have been watching thus far. The book that made it at the very bottom, 6th on my list, is Plague Year, America in the Time of COVID by Lawrence Wright. I think a couple things about this book, if I wasn't clear before while I was actually reading it, made it bad. One, it's too soon. It's ostensibly about just the year 2020, and so it was published in 2021. But it's kind of really about COVID, and COVID isn't over yet. The pandemic that is the SARS-CoV-2 related is not over yet. So what's the point of just this first year? Well, the point might be that you have specific insight about the first year response, which is like Michael Lewis's The Premonition, which is really only about the first 6 or so months of COVID response and is quite good. And I would highly recommend over this book. No, really the only like specific 2020 insights there is are politically related. Ends up feeling like the book is like, let's blame Donald Trump for COVID. And I don't want to imply his administration did not mess up because, whoo boy, they did. But we've seen that it's not like just having a different president could have fixed everything. There have been failures at multiple levels of government, and there have been failures at multiple levels of like our structural institutions. And I think that this book gives those structural institutions too much credit and doesn't peel back enough. Here in Plague Year, it was just disappointing, frustrating. I dragged myself through, and this really tanked my reading for the entire month of February. 5th, you'll see and thank Caitlin. We didn't actually see you finish this one, which is true. We are supposed to finish every book. I always try to finish every book, but I also know myself. I read a fair amount of nonfiction, and I read a fair amount generally, and I generally know within 200 pages whether or not I'm going to like a book. So I didn't make it before I had to vote, and I sat yesterday and I thought, what could potentially happen in the next, 500 pages that would change the position of this book on my list, because it's really about where I'm ranking it. And the truth is that for me personally, this is just not my kind of nonfiction. And there was really very little the author could do that would have changed that. Now, if the author was writing a completely different history of the Enlightenment, where they were connecting it more directly to the modern day, they were inserting more commentary, that maybe would have appealed to me more specifically, and I maybe would have liked it. But the author's really clear in that first 200 pages that, Richie Robertson is not interested in putting our modern day sensibilities onto the Enlightenment, with some small exceptions. He's not interested in placing into the context for our present today. He's really interested in a history of the Enlightenment told by sections about each topic of the Enlightenment. And for me personally, it was just, I voted for 2 other books that were also really big chonkers, really long. And every time I picked this up, just felt like, I wish those other books had made it and this had not, because those other books didn't make it. to the voting rounds. And so I found myself being like, why am I reading about the Enlightenment when I'd really rather be reading about the history of ACT UP? So yeah, feel free to yell at me down below for letting my own personal feelings just infect this book, but I do believe I really gave it as fair of a shot as I could. I am extremely interested, though, in everyone else's thoughts on this. If you voted for this to make it to the judging rounds, but didn't get to read it as part of those rounds, please let me know why you voted for it. If you were in Group A and you had thoughts of any kind on this book, please let me know where they are. If you see someone else who was in Group A who posted a video or a blog or a Twitter thread, whatever, about how they felt about this book, please let me know. I would just really love to know. That is my 5th place. I seem to be missing a clip here, but essentially, On Animals was 4th for me because the essays were mostly more than 10 years old, and they were presented without really any connection to each other, apart from subject matter and author. It was perfectly adequate for Susan Orlean fans, but not worth the Booktube Nonfiction Prize. Nothing against Susan Orlean personally, she's a very competent writer, but this collection of essays just didn't cut it for me. It shouldn't go on in this particular judging competition. So where did I place the others? Well, this one was very odd and strange for me, and I think any other person could reasonably have swapped this with this, or really some of the others I have here. I'm really only feel strongly about my number 6 and my number 1, that it is a Diary of a Young Naturalist by Dara McAnulty. I'm probably saying that name incorrectly. I voted for this one. I was really interested in it. I was super excited when I saw it was in my group. And then through no fault of this book's own, just I had in my mind an idea of what it would be, and it was not quite that. It is Diary of a Young Naturalist, and it is literally a diary. I know. I'm knocking this book for telling me what it was and then me making something else up. It was a diary over 1 year. I really enjoyed that this ended up covering more than just the author's interactions with nature. It also talked about their interactions in school as they became more and more involved in global climate change protest movements. But at the same time, when this idea in my head of it that I had was that it would be a little bigger in scope, or that it would be just more than just a diary. And I want to say here too that it is in a way more than just a diary, which is what I liked about it, which is why it made it into the 3rd position. But I don't know. It's not what I expected it to be, but it's still good. If that's meaningful in any way, I would like to see what other people think of this, and I would like it to go on. Compared to the other 3, I think it's worth continuing based on what I was given. It hurts me a little inside having looked at some of the other groups and knowing that there's books that got out this round that I think were more deserving than some of the books here. And this is actually one of them. And I kind of struggled with, I think if I had liked this more, it would have made it into 2. And it just wasn't totally what I imagined it could have been. But I have intended to read this book for more than a year, but did not vote for it because I didn't think it was worthy of the Booktube Nonfiction Prize based on previous rounds that I've judged. And yet, among the group that I had, it was still my 2nd favorite, and that was Fuzz by Mary Roach. I really enjoy Mary Roach's style. I recommend her all the time to people. She writes kind of slightly irreverent science nonfiction where each chapter is about a specific thing under a larger umbrella topic, but then the chapters do slightly connect together in a way that it does feel like the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts. So in Fuzz, she's talking about all the ways that humans can interact with wildlife in a way that is negative. Each chapter ends in a way that leads very directly into the next chapter. So it pulls you through in a way that a more standalone essay collection does not necessarily. And I think it had a lot of interesting things to say, and I liked the science in it. Do I think in some of the other years or some of the other groups that this would have made it into my top 3? Not necessarily. I'll put it this way. The very first year that I judged, I actually got really lucky. I had a really terrible book in my first round, but I also had some very good books in my first round, and 2 books in that round made it all the way to the finals, which is unusual. My second year, I started out in the 2nd round, so I didn't really get the first round. I didn't know it was there or not. But here, this year, I would say of the 6 books that I read, I would only be mad if one of them continues the Plague Year. I'll be mad if Plague Year continues. I don't expect any of these to make it to the finals except my first choice. So if Fuzz makes it to the second round and then doesn't make it past that, I won't be surprised at all, because I think that it is doing exactly what it's sold on the title to be, but is not necessarily a Booktube Nonfiction Prize winner. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want you to think it's a bad book, but also, I don't know, there's just a level of like meaningfulness that I place on sort of the past finalist groups. On the other hand, this book that I've known I wanted to read for a while, that I finally read because of this, absolutely I could see making it to the finals because it was outstanding. And that was Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zauner. This book was amazing. It is a memoir that is about grief and death and being bicultural and biracial. It's about food and the way that food connects us to our family and our heritage. It is such a good book. It is about so many things. It is about some very specific things that technically don't apply to my life, but I still felt brought along with the author. It made me feel a lot of things, made me feel a lot of nostalgia. It made me feel deeply. I cried. I laughed. This book is worthy of Booktube Nonfiction finalist status, and I'm going to watch it closely as it makes it through. And if it doesn't make it to the finals, I will be very sad because I think that it is spectacular and I fully expect this to go all the way. Here again is where I ranked everything. Oof. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, if you have similar opinions, if you are curious about whether or not you should pick some of these up. I know I was really hard on like basically everything below Crying in H-Mart, but I do think a lot of these have like good merits, and for the right person, you could really enjoy them. I don't think every piece of nonfiction has to be like a Booktube Nonfiction Prize finalist or winner. You know, like there's value in Mary Roach's nonfiction. There's value in a collection of essays from your favorite nonfiction writer. There just isn't value in terms of this prize in this year. I think that's my thoughts. I will hopefully actually get this edited and posted to you for the very first time ever. I hope you liked this vlog, and the next thing you will see from me is my everything I read in February and March in one sentence each book, not one sentence total. That would be a lot of semicolons. And I also am hoping to vlog the next round. So in 2 months, you'll see me talking about those books. And I hope that I get things that I enjoy more overall, or that I think have more prestige or meaning to them overall, but we'll see. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.